Hello everyone, welcome back. This is part 2. We're going to talk about the immune response right now. All right, so let me move myself out of the way. All right, so we have immunity because of two things, specificity and memory, which basically means that our cells in our immune system are able to mount an attack, a very specific, customized attack against antigens that we encounter for especially a second time. You see, those same cells also remember antigens, and so if they dare to enter our bodies again, we are already prepared. Our cells have the antibodies already created. We have cells that are going to specifically remember that antigen. And so if it comes back in order to harm us, then our cells are going to protect us so swiftly that we don't even know we were infected. We don't even know that we don't even get sick. That's how fast it actually works. So I want you to think about this. Every time that you get sick with a cough or a cold, you have been infected by an antigen, a virus, a bacteria that you have never encountered before. But that would be the last time that that antigen caused you to get sick, because if it entered your body again sometime in the future, then it would be stopped from making you suffer through sickness by our immune system. So we're going to talk about those mechanisms a little bit here and then in the next video lecture. So immunity has two arms. We have the nonspecific or the innate arm and the specific/adaptive arm. And our innate arm of immunity includes mechanisms that we are born with, mechanisms that we have always had, and to a point, it is genetically determined. This is different from the specific or the adaptive arm of immunity because this includes mechanisms that are built up over time. So we have to have exposure, for an initial exposure first, before we can have memory and before we can have immunity and have this customized resistance to pathogens. We are going to focus today on the pink arm, the innate arm of immunity. But I just want to give you a brief overview here. Both the innate and the adaptive arms come together to form the immune system. And the immune system is different from other body systems that we have studied, which have very concrete organs that are fixed in certain positions in the body. The immune system is not entirely like that. There are some specialized organs that are a part of the immune system, like the spleen, but largely it's molecules and cells that are found in some organs, but that are mostly traveling and circulating around the body continuously. All right, so let's talk about the pink boxes, the pink branches, innate immunity. So the first line of defense against pathogens constitutes innate immunity. And the very first part is the mechanical barrier, the skin and the mucous membrane. So these are the first two things that bacteria are going to encounter, and not just bacteria, but any kind of antigen when they try to enter the body. So the skin has a slightly acidic pH, and it also has oil glands that secrete sebum onto the surface of the skin. And both of these create an environment for microbes that is not very conducive to their growth. But the skin also does something else. If you reach way back to the beginning of the year when we talked about the integumentary system, the skin is going to shed And anything that's on the surface of that skin is going to be lost as well. And if it's lost, then it's not going to be able to harm our bodies. So those are ways that our skin are going to help protect us. We also have mucous membranes, which line the different areas, the different openings that our body has to the environment, like the mouth, the nose, the anus. These mucous membranes are very sticky, so any antigen that comes in is going to be trapped in that mucous membrane. And, if that's in our throat, we can cough it out. If it's in our nose, then we can sneeze it out. But there are also mucous membranes in the stomach that will protect us against antigens that are found on the surfaces of foods that we eat. So these cells are going to secrete hydrochloric acid and also enzymes, and those are detrimental to microbes. Our saliva also contains lysozymes, which will kill off microbes as well before they get too deep into our body. And don't worry about this article. All right, our second line of defense after our mechanical barriers are cells. In general, the cells of the immune system are white blood cells, and they respond to chemical signals by a method called chemotaxis. And the way that they move from the blood into the infected tissues is by a process called diapedesis, which I'll explain a little bit later. Many of these white blood cells, but not all of them, perform phagocytosis, which means that they will surround, engulf, and destroy antigens. Now, one of these phagocytes is called a neutrophil, and we've talked about these before. The neutrophils are the first responders to areas of infection, and they are the most numerous, but they die after one phagocytic event. So they encounter one antigen, they gobble it up, and then they die. And so dead neutrophils are what make up the white material that we call pus that is often seen in an infected area. Luckily, we have macrophages, and macrophages usually enter the area of inflammation or the area of infection about 12 hours after the neutrophils are there. And macrophages have insatiable appetites, so they are going to have more than one phagocytic event, and they are like the cleanup crew. So they not only will phagocytize and get rid of microbes and pathogens, but they will also clean up the carcasses of the neutrophils that have died after they've had their one phagocytic event. Two other cells that I really would like you to know are natural killer cells and dendritic cells. Natural killer cells, which are also referred to as NK cells, are lymphocytes, but they're special. Like they're cousins, the B cells and the T cells of the adaptive immune response. They aren't going to act against an antigen until they've been sensitized or activated. But natural killer cells, as part of the innate immune system, don't need that activation. The natural killer cells don't ask questions. If they encounter a cell that is non-self, then they are going to kill it. That being said, they're not phagocytes. They are going to use chemical weapons in order to kill the cells. Now, if we look at this top picture, the pink little fluff ball here, that's the NK cell, and you can see that it's right up against that yellow colored tumor cell, and you're probably like, how is that big old tumor cell going to get into that little pink cell there? Well, again, the NK cells are not phagocytes, so it's not going to engulf that tumor cell. Instead, that NK cell has gotten up very, very close to the problematic cell, and it's going to release chemicals called perforins, and it's going to make perforations in the cell membrane of that tumor cell. Well, a perforin, now I just want you to imagine a saltine cracker. When you look at the cracker has little holes all on its surface. Those are perforations. That's exactly what the perforins that are secreted by the NK cells are going to do. And then they have another enzyme called a granzyme that's going to enter that tumor cell through these tiny little holes that it's already made. And granzymes are protein digesting enzymes, and they are just going to digest all of the proteins that are found inside of that tumor cell and just turn it to goo, so that that cell is just going to die. And that's how NK cells use chemical weaponry in order to kill their targets. NK cells are also going to release some inflammatory chemicals in order to promote the inflammatory response, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The bottom picture that I have, we've got a cell that's colored red, and it looks like we've got a lot of little tentacles coming up out of it. This is called a dendritic cell. And dendritic cells were named because those tentacles look like the dendrites that are coming off of the cell body of a neuron. Now, dendritic cells have one job and one job only, and it is a job at which they are extremely skilled. They are antigen-presenting cells, abbreviated as APCs. And antigen-presenting cells are extremely important. This is why I'm bringing it up, because we're going to be talking about it again. But these APCs are the bridge. They are the link between the innate immune response and the adaptive immune response. So the dendritic cells are considered a part of the innate immune response because we all have them. There's nothing that has to be done in order for them to work. They're going to know what to do because that's just what they're supposed to do. That's what they've been programmed to do. What these dendritic cells do is something called antigen presentation. So when they encounter a non-self cell, they're going to surround and engulf it and take it in to kill it. But they do something else as well. They're going to take a portion of that antigen and display it on the cell membrane of their own cell. And they're going to bring it circulating through the blood. They're going to find a T cell, a T lymphocyte, that has the receptor for that particular antigen. And they're just going to say, dude, I think that this is your antigen. And then the T cell will see if it's a match. And if it is, it's going to initiate the adaptive immune response. This is a customized attack against that particular antigen only. And it includes chemicals and a whole slew of cells that we're going to talk about the next time that we meet. But that whole cascade cannot happen unless antigen-presenting cells, and dendritic cells are just one kind of antigen-presenting cells. There are a few others that are listed in your book, but dendritic cells, again, like I said, are really, really good at this. So the dendritic cells are the link. They're a part of the innate immune response, but they are necessary for the adaptive response to occur. And with that adaptive response, protection against that antigen for a lifetime. All right, here we are talking about inflammation. And before we start, I just wanted to mention that inflammation is a double-edged sword. We need inflammation. That's the bright side of it. We need it in order to fight off antigens. But if you have prolonged systemic inflammation, there are many diseases that can be caused by that, one of them being coronary artery disease. Problems with macular degeneration happen in the eyes of diabetics because of inflammation. So inflammation is very good, but if it gets out of hand, then it can cause lots and lots of problems in the body. So I just wanted to make mention of that before we go on. So inflammation is going to occur because tissues that are injured, maybe by physical trauma or from infection, are going to release chemicals. These chemicals are going to cause vasodilation and also increase the permeability of blood vessels. These two things are going to produce what is known as the cardinal signs of inflammation: heat, redness, pain, and swelling. So with vasodilation, and actually I'm going to stop here because I've only got one more minute in this little chunk, and then I'll come back. So I'll start the next part with inflammation.